Apart from automobiles and the textile sector, India-US deal is also a very serious concern for the pulse farmer in the country. So this is exactly why we will be looking into this from prelims and mains perspective. Firstly, have a look at this Niti Aayog 2024 data. Now, if you can look very closely guys, India has the highest area under cultivation of pulses, right? Also if you see, India is the highest producer of the pulses, correct? And this is exactly what we have to understand. It is an irony for India that despite being the highest producer and the highest grower of price also, we are actually dependent on imports, right? Now let us actually look at some other data too. For example, if you look into the yield, for example, the mean productivity of the pulses in the country, that is actually quite low. Why? Because countries such as Ethiopia is at number 1. Even countries such as Brazil, right, US, all of them are better than India in the yield perspective, and this is why India is actually facing very low levels of production of pulses, and that is why we need to increase the same. But before that, just get to know, in India we generally have 2 pulse growing seasons, the Kharif and the Rabi one. And here it is very important for all of you to actually know that the pigeon pea, the green gram, black gram and horse gram are all Kharif crops. But the chickpea, lentil, field bean, green gram and black gram, these are actually forms of Rabi crop. And also notice one thing, that black gram is actually both of the same, right? Also, if you look at the highest production in the country, we have chickpea, pigeon pea, green gram and black gram in an increasing to decreasing order. Very important for your prelims again. The highest state producing pulses is Madhya Pradesh in the country, and this is why we were talking about this kind of data. In 2020, they asked that with reference to black gram, they can be cultivated as both Kharif crop or Rabi crop or not. And with reference to these 2 and 3 statements, you let me know what is the answer in the comments below. And that is why the PYQs are very important for us to know, right? Because then only why we will be getting to know the nature of the questions. Now, on to understanding one more important thing. We have just discussed that the current figure when it comes to the annual production, India is actually leader in the same. But when we talk about the demand, for example, in India, we love having dal chawal, right? So see that 3 crore tons is the demand and production is only around 2.5 crore tons. So this gap is filled by imports from Canada, Myanmar, Mozambique, and right now this is where US is trying to come into the picture, correct? But firstly, we have to understand why this production is lagging behind. Firstly, we have to understand that India is a rain dependent country when it comes to irrigation. So irrigation when it comes to pulses is actually quite required, but sometimes if there is a kind of an erratic monsoon pattern or monsoons are not regularly held, it can lead to lower yields. Also, you have seen countries such as Ethiopia have much more higher yields. For example, we are using the same area of land. For example, if India is using this area, Ethiopia is using this area. That means Ethiopia is producing much more pulses in the same area, right? So that means we are not utilizing our fields properly because we use poor seed technology. We use low input investment by the farmers. For example, they do not spend much more on the irrigation channels, the new technologies, because they simply do not have too much of funds. And that is why the MSP comes into the picture. MSP, for example, if you see, includes pulses. But if you see from 2019 to 2024, only around 2.9 to 12.4% of the total production of the pulses, right? Only 12.4% have been procured under MSP. Just imagine the scene that the farmers who grow these pulses for MSP, they sell off outside in the market. They do not sell it to the government because the implementation of MSP at the ground level is actually quite poor. And that is why we are dependent on the imports here. That means when we talk about the pulses supply chain in the country, it is not good. On the farmer side, irrigation, monsoon, seeds are challenged. When we talk about the market side, government is not procuring properly. That means at the ground level, the MSP implementation is quite poor. And that is why you see such a high commodity such as pulse, which is quite rich in protein, and that is also very useful for the vulnerable sections of the population, that is seeing a decline. And this is how the US is coming in. If you look into this Indian Express article here, for example, according to the latest data, India's pulse import in the first 9 months of 2025-26 stood at around $2.5 billion. And this is actually 33% down from the last year, correct? And this means that over a period of time we are maybe decreasing the amount of import of pulses, but still that is substantially high, because India imports 1/5 of its yearly consumption of the pulses. And the main markets we have already seen: Canada, Russia, Brazil, Myanmar, Africa, and right now US. US, for example, is not a very big import destination. For example, US only exported around $90 million worth of pulses, but it is seeing an opportunity right now. US is seeing that, see, India, you have all these kind of issues. So that is why in my trade deal, I have to forcibly include pulses, and this is how you have to buy pulses from me. So that is why in the trade deal agreement, or say so-called announcement that they did, both India and US did, the pulses category was dropped, correct? And that is why the farmers are having issues with it. Farmers are asking the question, so the US is forcing you to import it, where you can actually, the government of India can give the farmers money, irrigation, technology, and all of this can improve the yields in the country, like Ethiopia, which is an African nation, which is not even a developed nation, right? So that means that the farmers are right now thinking that, because of the MSP issues, the MSP is not being implemented at the ground level, right? Also, because of the various farmer protests which happened before also, the farmers are losing their trust in the government. And there are so many farmers which are complaining against the same, that why this pulses mention has been dropped from the, say, agreement with reference to the US import of various pulses in India, right? This can also totally depress the prices, bring down the prices, because US farmers receive high amount of subsidies. They will be, selling the low priced pulses in the country. It can lead to price crash, and this can also lead to more and more losses for the farmers going forward. And all of this can make the situation much more politically sensitive. And that is exactly why we need structural reforms. India in 2025 has launched this self-sufficiency mission in pulses, where we are earmarking around, say, 11,000 crore for the main implementation of the pulses program in the country, where, for example, with reference to the technological side, there will be a Sati portal. Procurement assistance will be given to the farmers with reference to assuring 100% MSP procurement, because this is what is at around 12% right now, right? And apart from that, we will be having much more amount of assistance by the agricultural scientists with the farmers, measuring the soil quality. Everything will be checked. Also, with reference to this, we should be trying to give MSP guarantee, just like the rice and wheat system. We should be having much more emphasis on this respect. Also, the government of India should be considering infrastructural expansion. When we talk about the various warehouses, the cold storage, we have to preserve the pulses for a longer period of time, because we are actually very neck to neck when we talk about demand and consumption. Also, productivity boost via better technological seeds, better amount of irrigation, using drones, using fertigation, all of those things must be done. And at the end of the day, pulses and the seeds of the same must be climate resilient. They must not be using so much of water or so much of fertilizers. So that is how we should also be developing those varieties which are much more resistant to droughts, to floods, and to various other climatic stress. So this was all for this one. Now we'll be moving on to the next.